What is the worst feeling a human being can feel? Losing loved ones. I've lost a sister and my father in the span of 2 years, and the feeling that me, my other sister and mother get when we get together and realize our family is getting smaller is just very sad. I remember reading that the worst thing you can do to another human being is ignore their existence. When I get left on read or friends who don't respond for days later, who I know aren't doing anything. As an adult, my friend group has shrunk and getting smaller because I no longer reach out to people who don't make time for me or make me happy. The death of child. I once told a friend that the worst thing you can say to someone is, "I hope you outlive your children." I don't think she fully grasped how awful it was to wish that upon someone, because she told me she used the line less than a week later to a guy who took a parking spot she had been waiting for. She asked him if he had children and bizarrely he said he did. Then she said it to him. Heartache knowing the person you spent years of your life with, thinking they were your soulmate, having left only to leave you alone and isolated, trapped with your thoughts and ramped emotions. And maybe with a little sprinkle of loneliness, because most of your friends are married with children and no one really has time for you anymore. My time in the military ended with only one combat experience, but I still ended up kinda messed up. It was a nasty half a day of death and fear. So far in my life this is the worst feeling I have had, although I have 2 kids now, and I can't even imagine when parents lose their kids. No parent should ever bury a child. Ever. I was part of a quick reaction force that would provide convoy security for Rio D. Anytime an IED or explosive was used in our AO, they would have to respond to do a post-blast analysis, and we would provide security for them on the way to the site. And while they were working, we respond to a car bomb that had gone off one morning, and my 20-year-old brain was not prepared for what I saw. The car had been driven into a school building when morning classes had started. So much blood. So many dead kids. That was 13 years ago, and I still think about it to this day. Some nights when I wake up from that memory, I crawl in bed with my kiddo and hug her tight. We got so much blood on us that we had to burn our boots and camis in a barrel. Standing there in silence, watching the fire, and thinking about everything we witnessed that day, that was the worst feeling I've ever felt. I still remember vividly the call I got from my mom about my dad having a heart attack and being rushed to the hospital. My thoughts immediately went into a fix the problem insert, and I started getting ready to drive out there. My mom was going to need emotional support, help around the house. My dad would want to see me while he was in recovery, and maybe I could finally convince him to start exercising more. I thought about what we'd do together to keep in shape. I even thought about bringing the Advil we had in the medicine cabinet, but reason that he was at a hospital, they would have some. I finished getting dressed, packed up a couple things I thought I'd need if the stay lasted longer than expected, and went out to my car. My phone rang again the moment I put my hand on the car door. He had died. I was young then. I still am by some accounts, but I was young to be losing a father. I remember letting out a wispy no on the small amount of breath that escaped my lips. It was involuntary. The hour-long drive to my mum's place was a blur. My thoughts had never moved so quickly in my life. My reptile brain was looking for an answer where there wasn't one. I remember calling a few close friends, looking for any kind of comfort. I remember feeling lightheaded and almost passing out while driving on the highway. I remember getting lost on the way to the hospital and cursing myself out for it and beating on the steering wheel so badly that I fractured my pinky. It could wait. I had other things to worry about. There are probably more considerate answers or empathetic ones in this thread, but this is mine. My grandpa and grandma adopted me. Grandpa was my dad. He was everything. This man was amazing, and I love him with every ounce of my being down to the milligram. At 20 years old I had just taken a shower. I had my hair in a towel and was petting my chihuahua. I was about to play some WoW when my phone rang. Grandpa died of a sudden heart attack. Dropped dead. I've never let out another scream like the one I did that day 6 years ago. I truly understand now what it means to wail for the death of a loved one. I was in a different country than him at the time. I couldn't even go support my grandma and go to his funeral. He was only 65. I was only 20. I still ask the universe why this had to happen. And if I could die in his place I would. The man was a saint that helped and changed the lives of hundreds of people. I'm just a depressed loser. Here's a brief summary of a story I read in Smithsonian magazine a few years ago. A few dozen middle-aged men were the only surviving residents of a Polish town of thousands, obliterated by the Nazis and buried in mass graves. The men were tasked, in the waning months of the war, with digging up and burning the corpses of the townsfolk to mask the Nazis' crimes. The men averaged about 100 bodies per each day. One man, in a single day, dug up, transported and burned the bodies of his wife, sister, and mother. Aggrieved and enraged, he confided in a friend his plan to attack the Nazi guards and kill as many as he could manage. "You are being selfish," his friend replied. "They will kill all of us if you do this." The worst thing to feel is the feeling of being cut off from all of your senses. My best friend went through this, and it's absolute torture. From what I know, you can't tell anything about your location, who's around you, anything. It's practically just endless screaming. And in the end, it can send you to a terrible place. She's currently in a mental hospital and has been there for 6 months. The experience wound up driving her mute, and she was rendered clinically insane due to violent outbursts, where she would hurt herself or others, constant mutters of absolute nonsense, night terrors, and just generally unable to comprehend anything. It's one of my biggest regrets that I wasn't there. But in the end, that is the worst form of torture and the worst thing you could ever feel. Being betrayed by someone you trusted. Since betrayal from another human being can potentially be a great risk for one's life, evolution has made that feeling suck and also make it stick. We are genetically wired to never forget somebody's betrayal. Even if we forgive them at some point, we will still remember it. The pain that is associated with betrayal cuts into our core and can leave us with trust issues for the rest of our lives. When it comes down to it, we are social beings, but some fail at it. Let's say a psychopath who basically sees everyone as a tool to manipulates a normally very trusting person. If the results are severe enough, that person can be paranoid for life. Being dipped in acid scores high up too, but betrayal, man. Suicidal. When you truly believe that you are worthless and unloved and are a burden to everyone because you're mentally ill, and the world would be a better place if you were no longer in it. When you've fucked up, but the consequences aren't until tomorrow. You know they're coming, they're unavoidable, and you know it's your fault. A perfect, if minor, example of this is the evening on the last day of the summer school holidays, when you haven't done that one big piece of homework you were given, and it's due tomorrow. You don't have the time to do it, so you just have to go in and take the punishment. But you have all night to think about what you should have done and how bad the punishment will be. I think I had a minor flashback typing this. Parents calling you a sinner and that you're demon possessed. This is the kind of betrayal no one needs to feel, especially from parents who are supposed to love and support you on all levels of life no matter what. To be powerless while someone/thing you love is suffering/dying. I have never felt lower in my life than watching my sweet little dog fade away. I have felt blinding pain from an impinged nerve. It made me want to smash my head into a wall so that I didn't feel anything, and that was not as hurtful as watching Maggie die, holding her in my hands, completely unable to help her. Where you've been arguing with someone for hours certain that you're right, and then it turns out you're completely wrong.